Hello, and thank you very much, Josh, for meeting us again. We are South Central Brooklyn United for Progress. Thank you for joining us in this event. We're asking a number of candidates for these short interviews as we consider our endorsement process. This will be the second year where our group has done endorsements. Last year we did three. We anticipate doing possibly even less this year. We have with a 66% threshold. We're very concerned about making sure that when we do endorse people, that we are able to really go all out for them. But we want to make sure that we also have lots of information out for residents to learn about the candidates. We've been speaking with a number of candidates. We're very, very excited to speak to you. And since I've already been speaking too much, I'm going to be quiet for a while. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes, if you don't mind, to introduce yourself to the group, and then we'll do about 10 minutes of Q&A. And if we run a little bit long, I think that's all right. All right. With no further ado, thank you very much, sir.
All right. So thank you, Gerald. I appreciate you guys inviting me and that your organization, the South Central Brooklyn United for Progress, has decided to take an interest in this particular race. I actually believe it's critical that you guys participate in this particular race. It elevates the level of the discussion and helps to focus on the issues that are most pressing. But to begin with, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Josue Pierre. I am a candidate for City Council in the 40th Councilmanic District, which includes Flatbush, Titmus Park, Kensington, Prospect Lefferts Gardens, Wingate, South, Crown Heights, and Midwood as well. I came here from Haiti when my parents brought me over at 5 years old. I was raised on Church Avenue where they lived in a rent-stabilized apartment. My dad worked 3 jobs. My mom was a home health aide, and they were able to use those jobs to scrape together just enough money to purchase a home in Flatbush where they raised me and my 3 brothers. Most of my public school career, I attended underfunded schools, which my nephews are now attending, and that caused me to fall behind when I got to high school. But the immigrant worldview in Flatbush is basically, if there's a teacher, there are desks, and there are books, you will learn. So I struggled through high school, but I got into CUNY Baruch College, and I was able to graduate with a degree in accounting and finance. I parlayed that into eventually becoming a senior financial analyst at the Office of the New York City Comptroller, where my job was investing pension money for teachers, fire, and other city employees into affordable housing throughout the city. So it's something I'm very familiar with. Outside of that, I am a 3 times elected district leader. I have a long history of having worked in the community in preparation of not just running, but just the fact that I do really pay attention from just walking the community. If you walk along Church Avenue, if you walk along Cortellia or Ocean Avenue, you see what the issues are, you see the diversity of the issues, you see how it impacts different people, and that brings forth policy ideas. So if you visit my website, which is pierre2021.com, and you look under the news section, you'll see some of the articles I've been in, and you'll also see some of the op-eds I've written on the particular issues. Most importantly, I think, is the budget, how it impacts our schools, sanitation, small businesses, and very importantly, our kids' education and housing. So that's a little bit about me and some of the things that I've been doing within the community. And with that, I would actually like to hear some of the questions that you all have for me.
All right. Thank you so much, Josh. And it looks like well, people are already starting to raise their hands, but I'm going to say if you have a question, please go ahead and raise your hand and we will try to get to you. We'll start with Matt.
Thank you. Thank you for being here and doing the interview. I'd like to get 2 quick questions. One, if you're on the council and you're assigned to one of the committees that are not one of your top issues, how will you go about handling that? And the second question is, could you please give us your view on the status of the Brooklyn Democratic Party?
Awesome. So first, the council question. So basically, you want to know if I was on a committee that is not one of my top priorities, how I'd go about it. Well, so no person, I do have my specialties where I know I'm strong when it comes to budget, housing, etc. But there are committees that you do end up on, no matter what the committee is, it is in the best interest of the local community. Let's say I were to end up on the like sanitation, right? It's really a function of always having intake of what the key issues are in the community. And if you're engaging people and you're out there and you're having the right communications with your constituency, you'll know what the issues are. You'll know where garbage is properly being picked up, and you'll know where it's not properly being picked up. And that helps to inform me. The other thing about sitting on various types of committees is this. Like I said, I'm very well versed in certain policy positions, but you have to be open to not just getting input from the community, but also engaging people who are specialists in different areas, right? So that would be some of the things that I would lean on: the community, people who are specialists in different areas, and engaging in a way that pushes the interests of the local community on that city council level. And then, so your next question was about the party in general. So I've been a Democrat since David Dinkins was mayor, right? How did I become a Democrat? So one, I basically follow whatever my dad followed on TV growing up. So he was a big fan of David Dinkins, so I was a big fan of David Dinkins. He was not a fan of Ronald Reagan, so I wasn't a fan of Ronald Reagan. But over time, I started to know what the things were that were important to me and my community. And over time, as I became more educated about what those values are and what the potential solutions were, and I combined it with the fact that I love history, I'm a student of history, I started to realize from seeing LBJ and FDR, MLK, and all the other peoples that have those three initials, that I was a progressive. And so when I became a district leader, I brought that progressivism with me, but I also brought it in a Flatbush style. I look at the world as people with common interests, but at different points in their lives. And I know that the bulk of my community has needs that are different from people who might be more privileged. So I've always tried to focus in on those issues so that they can catch up and be able to say, well, now that I'm housing secure, I can now be able to focus on the issue of climate change. So the party itself, if you had come to the party when I had first joined the party, maybe about, I want to say it's 11 years now, it's basically come a long, long, long way from where it was when Vito Lopez was the leader of the party. But at the same time, even with progress, it's nowhere near perfection. It's just like racial justice. We've come a long way from people getting beaten in the streets and having, well, maybe not that long of a way, but we've made some progress and there's a lot more progress to be made. That's my general view of the party. I also believe that it's my personal belief that you want a strong, well-funded, centralized party, simply because that allows us to do a lot more than if you have a very loosely affiliated confederation of people who are not talking to each other because of the demographic and geographic distances. Thank you for your question.
Thank you very much. We have a few more hands there, so I'm going to do my best to call them in the order that they, I'm going to do my best to call them in the order they came up. I believe it was Jess, Ellen, Jen, and then Michael. So let's start with Jess.
Hey, Josh. Jess
Hey,
Byrne here. Hey. So of course I'm going to ask you an education question.
got it.
Okay. Just so it was interesting when you were talking about schools and books and teachers, right? Right now we are in a mode of pandemic learning, which I'm sure you're well aware.
Yes.
We sometimes have teachers, we have no books, and half of our schools are unusable because like high schools and middle schools are still closed. So I'm wondering, what do you see the path going forward? How do we get not just get our schools reopened because of COVID, because they will eventually all be reopened, but kind of integrate what we've done with remote learning into, if you see a way to integrate some of these remote features into our classrooms and kind of bring our classrooms into the 21st century, finally.
Okay, so thank you for your question, Jess, and thank you for the work that you do with your CEC. I often feel that there are a lot of things that you guys do at your CEC that would be very beneficial to 17 because it's a few steps behind. Having said that, first, with regards to COVID and the schools reopening, just a few months ago, I did a town hall with Councilmember Mark Traeger prior to the schools opening. And we had a lot of concerns about not just remote learning, but safety during COVID. If you guys want to see what that was about, you can Google my name, Councilmember Mark Traeger at schools, and you'll get that article from what we did there. What have we learned? We've learned, surprise, you need technology in the classroom and you need kids to have technology that's up to date. If you really think about the things that kids are getting from remote learning, the iPads, etc., there's no reason really why we didn't have those things in place prior to COVID. The level of technology that our kids are getting in the public schools now because of COVID is what kids in more middle-class communities in the suburbs were already getting. That's why they had an easier transition. Yes, they're wealthier, but their school system provides more. I feel that when you look at remote learning and you look at the economy that we're shifting into, I saw my nephew the other day using Google Docs. He's like 9 years old. Google Docs and whatever their form of Zoom is to engage. He's going to be prepared for the real working world, because that means he now understands how to use remote technology to accomplish his objectives and goals, meet the homework, which is the same as meaning work, etc. So there are a lot of things that we learned that I think we're going to have to fully integrate. But we've also learned that we're validating the fact that we have a digital divide that is based on economics, geography, and race. What are we going to do about that? We are going to have to pour more resources into schools that were not as properly prepared, into communities that were not as properly prepared. And that's one of the reasons why I'm very supportive of maintaining fair school fundings, but also increasing fair school funding to ensure that we have a far less segregated schooling system. I hope that sufficiently answered your question. If it didn't, please feel free to ask a follow-up. Okay.
No, I'm good.
Thumbs up. All
We're
right.
good. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jess. Next up, I believe we have Ellen.
Hi, Josh. Good to see you.
Hey, Ellen.
Like Jess asked an education question, I'm going to ask a healthcare question. You say in your questionnaire that you're a supporter of universal health care. So I'm just wondering if you can say that you're a supporter of the New York Health Act.
Yes. Yes. You may not remember, Ellen, we had this discussion, I want to say 2.5 years ago, when you were organizing around it, and I was a supporter then. I was a supporter 10 years, maybe years before that, because of the elements that's in it, and I remain a supporter of it. So the follow-up to that would be, what can I do in the council? In order to make people understand the value of public healthcare systems, we have to make sure that we properly invest in our hospitals. Believe it or not, women who live in the Flatbush area that are serviced by Kings County Hospital don't even have a gynecological center at the hospital. The funding that is available at the council could actually put the facility together, which will then allow the specialists to come in. So yes, I am a supporter, and I will use my council seat as a voice both in the city, and I will travel up to Albany to be supportive. And I will put in the resources necessary to have world-class hospitals so people can continue to understand why it's important that we have publicly funded healthcare and that we don't continue to shift everything into the hands of the private organizations, which are driven by profits, not health.
Exactly. That's great, Josh. Thank you so much. And I'm putting in the chat, there is a candidate's pledge that we're asking people to sign. So you can take a look at it and see if you can sign on.
Please, and I know you have my email address. Please also email it to me just in case.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you so much, Ellen. Next up, I believe, is Jen.
Hi, Josh. How are you?
Hey, Jen, how are you?
Good to see you. I wanted to ask about, the situation here with housing. Specifically, what, the last 15 years or so, our current council member has done absolutely nothing to help keep long-term tenants and even shorter-term tenants in their homes. The situation was certainly helped by the 2018 housing legislation on the state level, but we still have one of the highest turnover of our rent stabilized apartments. People are still more so because of the financial impact of COVID, struggling at new heights.
Yeah.
I'm contacted nearly daily by people who are so behind in their rent, and I'm very fearful of what's going to happen to them when the moratorium is over.
Yes.
And I'd like to know from you what you will do on the city council, seeing as how you are coming from a district with a very high concentration of rent stabilized apartments, but also a high concentration of people struggling,
Yes.
whereas other council members don't really get that sometimes.
Exactly.
What are you going to do to help people stay in their homes and prevent the landlord tenant intimidation that goes on, and which takes the form of everything from harassment via neglecting repairs, things like that. I'm just curious to hear how you'll take a leadership role in this.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So thank you for your question, Jen. And this is part 2 of a conversation that you and I have had. We had like a long train ride together where we talked about housing, and that's when I found out you were also a housing specialist, just like me. So as I said before, so many things on this issue. I'm very likely the only candidate has ever worked on the financing of affordable housing and developed affordable housing throughout the city. That's just my background, and it's something I bring to the table. Number one, let's talk about what happened in Albany for a second. I'm very proud of the fact that I was part of that fight to get the rent laws changed in Albany. It was the only time, for the record, that I've ever been arrested in my life. I was proud to stand outside of the governor's office with New York Communities for Change and other activists to demand that he pass those rent laws. And yes, they didn't want us there, so they arrested us and kicked us out. But that is just what some of the things that you have to do when you want to see change. It's basically good trouble. What did I do? What the rent laws did does create protections, but I can tell you, coming out of a dual language immigrant community like the ones that we have in the Bangladeshi, Haitian American, and Spanish speaking community, that even if these laws exist, they mean nothing for communities like ours if there is no enforcement, active enforcement. So if you also Google my name, you'll see that I did write an op-ed right after those rent laws were passed, which talk about the need for a tenant protection unit within New York City. And that's one of the key pieces of legislation that I hope you guys will look into and help me push, God willing, I get into office, because I believe that you need education, because most of the people living along Ocean Avenue are unaware, and all the east from East 19 to Ocean to 17 are unaware of the laws and the changes. 2, you need active enforcement, and you need that active enforcement partially has to be done with the help of local nonprofits, the local nonprofits that speak our languages and understand how to communicate things to us in such a way that we're not fearful. 3, all of that culminates in the fact that people love to take advantage of immigrant communities because they feel we can't defend ourselves. And that's why it's also important that we have the right to counsel in the 11226 zip code, which is the core of this district, but we have to expand it out for all communities because we now know it works, and we now know that other communities are sorely in need of it. Beyond that, I strongly believe that anything that is public land that is being converted into residential property land should be 100% affordable without a concentration of poverty, but more of a diversity of incomes so that you have more people in there who are doing different things, et cetera. So those are some of the key things I look towards doing when I get into the city council on that front. Thank you for your question again, Jen.
Thank you very much, Jen, and thank you, Josh. I think we do have enough time for one more question. We may have to be a little bit truncated because I want to give you 1 minute at the end for a closing.
Thank
Michael, I think you're the last.
Yeah, I have a quick hitter and then like maybe a slightly medium hitter. And I'll stick with housing, so it's a continuation of the conversation.
Thanks.
Can you tell me how? I really like the idea of the legislation. Is the idea to keep what the mayor's office to protect tenants is already doing, or how is that different? And then I'll get to my. I'm actually really curious about your experience at Union Pension Fund. So if you don't mind, a quick answer on that one.
No problem. Quick answer, no, it's not the same thing. It's the mayoral prerogative, and that's why you have to understand government when you're going into government. It's a mayoral prerogative. If the next mayor doesn't care about it, it doesn't really do much.
Right. That's
We
what I'm
move out of there, we put it into HPD, which we also have to clean up, but it'll make it a line item in the budget that we can work with going into the future. Next question.
Cool. And regarding your financing of affordable housing, which
Mhm.
development that you've worked on in the past that you financed are you most proud of, and why?
So I just got to think, because sometimes you're not allowed to disclose, but the one that I know I feel like I can talk about is there's a development on Loring Place in the Bronx, 100% affordable. I'm very proud of it because of the number of units. I'm very proud of it because of the diversity of incomes. It had real deep income. It reflected the people in the community, but it didn't concentrate poverty in a way where like everybody's making under $30,000, and that can be problematic too. The other reason I'm proud of it is because I was there from start to finish, from the construction to the lease up to the final phase where we knew they had all the affordable housing tenants and we gave them the long-term takeout. So it's yeah, I'm very proud of it. It's the type of thing that I want to see here in Flatbush for us as well.
Yeah. And was that Union Pension Funds that that financed it?
Teachers, fire, and all the other 5 union pension funds that help to finance it.
Cool. I'll look more into that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, check out the PPAR program, New York City Comptroller's Office.
Yep.
Thank you very much for that question, and thank you much for the answer as well. I do want to give you a 1 minute closing statement. We are kind of bumping up against the end of our time here. So with no further ado, please.
Okay, so I had an opportunity to talk to you all about my different experiences, and the fact that my parents started off in rent stabilized housing. I know that there are people from my community who have not achieved what I have achieved or my parents have achieved. I know that there are people who are even more privileged, who had that middle class background and a better education, who feel like they will perpetually be renters. We have to create opportunities for them to have affordable housing and be able to have disposable income so that you eventually, at the minimum, be able to buy an affordable co-op. And those are the things that I look forward to working on. Everyone who wants to should have an opportunity to save enough to own their own home, and that's just not happening right now. I want you all to know that I've been endorsed by RWDSU, which is the Retail Wholesale Department Store Workers Union, New York Communities for Change, which is focused on tenant activism and is one of my main partners. And as the only openly LGBT candidate in the race, I've been endorsed by the Victory Fund and the Lambda Independent Democrats. In supporting me, you'll have a community partner who has organized community roundtables and town halls and understands the value of having this type of conversation before making decisions to formulate the policies that will affect you. So thank you for your time. And if you'd like to know more about me, please visit my website, pierre2021.com.
Thank you so much. That was an excellent ending. And I'm even happy to say that Zoom just told me they're not going to cut us off. So, but otherwise might have missed some of the end of that. But thank you so much for your time today, Josh. We really appreciate it. And we will continue to be in touch.
Thank you guys. Have a good evening.
Bye, you too.